Single Dad CEO found a little girl sleeping on trash. On Christmas Eve, the truth left him stunned. Snow fell in soft, fragile flakes, dusting the edges of New York's sidewalks like powdered glass. The city never truly slept, not even on Christmas Eve. Neon signs buzzed faintly, cars hummed in the distance, and laughter from late-night gatherings spilled into the frosty air. Yet behind Carter Tech's towering headquarters, where shadows swallowed the alleyway, the world felt like an entirely different place. Liam Carter had just stepped out of his building, his leather shoes crunching against the icy pavement. He was a man everyone in the city knew, the Single Dad CEO who had built an empire of innovation from the ground up. Success clung to him like an aura, the tailored coat, the polished cufflinks, the subtle authority in his stride. But even in his world of glass towers and billion-dollar deals, he had not expected the voice that reached him that night. "Sir, I just wanted to find my mum." The sound was barely more than a whisper, cracked and trembling, carried on the cold wind. Liam froze mid-step. His breath clouded before him as his head turned toward the source. At first, he thought he had imagined it, until he spotted the small figure huddled between two dumpsters. There, curled atop flattened cardboard like a makeshift bed, lay a girl no older than 5. Her tiny body was swallowed in an oversized coat, the sleeves dragging beyond her fingers. One shoe clung desperately to her foot, the other missing, her curly brown hair stuck in damp strands to her cheeks, her face blotched red by the bitter cold. She clutched a battered backpack under her head, as if it were a pillow. For a moment, Liam couldn't move. Something twisted sharply in his chest. Alarm, confusion, and something deeper, something he hadn't felt in years. Fear. The girl's lips quivered as she looked up at him again. "I wanted to go to the hospital where Mommy works, but I don't know where it is." Her words broke into a cough, dry and shallow, her small body shuddering with the effort. Liam was already moving before he realized it, his long strides closing the distance. He knelt on the frozen ground, pulling the scarf from his own neck and wrapping it gently around hers. "Hey, sweetheart," he murmured, his voice low, careful. "You're safe now. I've got you." Her tiny fingers clutched the scarf instinctively, though they were frighteningly blue at the tips. Her eyes, far too dull for a child, carried not panic, but exhaustion. Liam's throat tightened. He pulled his phone from his coat and dialed 911. His usually steady voice faltering. "I found a little girl," he said quickly, "alone outside Carter Tech. She's freezing. Might be hypothermia. Send help now." Ending the call, he didn't hesitate. He scooped her into his arms. She didn't resist. Her head fell against his chest, her body icy through the layers of his coat. "My name's Liam," he said softly, as snow swirled heavier around them. "What's yours?" Her lips parted, but only silence escaped. Her eyelids fluttered, heavy, and then closed. "Don't worry," Liam whispered fiercely, holding her tighter against the warmth of his body. "You're not alone anymore. Not tonight." The ambulance sirens cut through the quiet night, their wail echoing against the steel and glass of the city. Within moments, red and blue lights spilled into the alley, painting the snow in harsh colors. 2 paramedics rushed forward with a stretcher and blankets, their boots splashing through the slush. "She's freezing, pulse is weak," one muttered as he wrapped the child in an emergency blanket and placed an oxygen mask gently over her small face. Liam didn't let go immediately. His arms tightened as though releasing her would mean losing something far greater. Only when the paramedic gave him a sharp look did he ease his hold, though he remained close enough to touch her tiny hand. "Any idea who she is?" the paramedic asked. "She said she was trying to find her mother at a hospital," Liam answered quietly, his voice weighted with disbelief. "That's all I know." The paramedics exchanged glances, but didn't question further. They lifted her onto the stretcher, securing the straps with swift precision. Liam's gaze lingered on the girl's fragile form, wrapped in wires and plastic now instead of the ragged coat that had failed her. As they began rolling her toward the ambulance, he found himself speaking before he could stop. "Can I ride with her?" They paused, eyeing his tailored coat and expensive shoes, as though wondering why a man like him cared so much. Finally, one nodded. "You found her. Come on." Inside the ambulance, the air was warmer, buzzing with the rhythmic beeps of machines. Liam sat beside her, one hand resting lightly near hers. Her lashes fluttered once, then stilled, her face slack with exhaustion. He glanced at the floor where her things had been gathered, a cracked pink lunchbox, the battered backpack she had used as a pillow. He picked them up carefully, his chest tightening at how little she owned. The siren wailed again and the ambulance sped through the snow-choked streets, carrying them towards St. Teresa Hospital. Liam leaned closer, his voice quiet, as though speaking to her sleeping form might keep her tethered to him. "You were brave, sweetheart. So brave. We'll find your mum, I promise." The hospital was quiet, the storm muffling even the usual chaos of the ER. The child was whisked away by nurses, her small form swallowed by white sheets and machines. Liam followed close behind, his steps uncharacteristically uncertain. Hours blurred together. He stood near the bed, arms crossed, his gaze fixed on the girl as monitors hummed steadily beside her. The scarf he had wrapped around her still clung to her neck, a strange comfort to him in the sterile room. Then, at last, she stirred. Her lashes fluttered, and her eyes opened slowly. "Is this the hospital?" she whispered, her voice raspy. "Yes," Liam said gently, leaning forward so she could see him. "You're safe now." Her small hands clutched the blanket as if anchoring herself. "Did I get it right? Is this where Mummy works?" He hesitated, then asked softly, "Do you remember the name of the hospital?" She frowned, pressing a finger to her chest as if mimicking a badge. "It says St. Teresa. Mommy wears a blue jacket with letters here." Liam exhaled slowly. "Yes, this is St. Teresa." The tension melted slightly from her face. Her chest rose with a shaky breath, and her lips quivered again. "She told me. If she doesn't come home, I should go to the hospital." Liam's eyes softened as he sat down beside her bed. What happened last night? The little girl, Ella, as he would soon learn, blinked slowly, her voice thin and distant. "I waited, but Mommy didn't come. I put on my coat, and I followed the lights outside. Then the snow got heavy, I couldn't see anymore, so I sat near a box. I thought maybe morning would come." Liam's throat closed as her small hand trembled against the blanket. She had crossed the city alone, at 5 years old. "You were so brave," he whispered. "I promise. We'll find her." Morning light filtered weakly through the frosted hospital window. Snowflakes clung stubbornly to the glass, softening the edges of the city beyond. Liam stood at the nurse's station, gripping a clipboard with trembling fingers. He scanned the intake records with the same urgency he usually reserved for billion-dollar contracts. Names, dates, diagnoses. His eyes stopped at one entry. Unidentified female patient, admitted last night, found unconscious in a staff stairwell, possible stroke. No ID, listed as Jane Doe. The time matched what Ella had told him, just after 8, the moment she had started waiting. Liam's stomach clenched. He looked up at the nurse. "This Jane Doe, what does she look like?" The nurse frowned, hesitant. Mid-30s, blonde, thin build. She's in the ICU, still unresponsive. His heart jolted. "I need to see her," he said, the words coming out rougher than he intended. "Is she someone you know?" the nurse asked softly. "Maybe." He swallowed hard. "I think she might be the mother of the little girl I brought in last night." The nurse's expression softened. "Give me a minute." A few moments later, Liam stood just outside the ICU, Ella's small hand clutching his. Her wide eyes searched his face nervously. "Where are we going?" she asked in a timid voice. He knelt slightly, meeting her gaze. "I think your mom might be here," he whispered gently. "We're going to check." Ella's lips parted, her tiny fingers gripping his tighter. Together they stepped into the dimly lit room. The steady rhythm of machines filled the silence. Monitors beeped in measured tones. A pale figure lay still on the bed, tubes and wires snaking around her fragile frame. Her blonde hair was tangled across the pillow, her lips faintly blue. Ella froze. Her eyes darted to the pale blue blanket covering the woman. Her breath caught in her throat. "That's her coat," she whispered suddenly. "That's Mommy's." Her feet carried her forward in a rush, but she stopped short of the bed. Her tiny hands clutched the railing, knuckles white. "Mommy," she breathed, her voice trembling. Liam's chest tightened as he watched. Ella reached out with shaking fingers and touched her mother's limp hand. Her voice cracked with desperation. "It's me, Mommy. I found you, like you said. I came to the hospital." For a moment there was no response. The machines hummed on. Liam held his breath, fearing the silence would break her little heart. Then, the faintest twitch. The woman's fingers shifted, barely, but enough. Ella gasped, tears spilling down her cheeks. "She moved," she cried softly. "She knows I'm here." Liam stepped closer, resting a steadying hand on Ella's back. His voice was low but firm. "You did it, you found her." Ella pressed her forehead gently against her mother's arm. "I waited," she whispered through tears. "Then I came to find you. I didn't cry like you said." Liam's throat ached, his vision blurring. In this sterile ICU, surrounded by machines, something sacred had unfolded, a promise kept between mother and child. And in that moment, Liam Carter, a man who had long since stopped believing in miracles, felt something shift inside him. The ICU room quieted again, save for the steady hum of machines and the snow tapping against the window pane. Liam stood just beyond the bed, his arms folded as though bracing himself against a storm he couldn't control. Ella had fallen asleep in a chair beside her mother, her small frame curled against the armrest, still clutching her backpack. The drawing she had taped to the wall, two stick figures holding hands, swayed slightly in the draft from the heater. Liam turned when a nurse entered. "She needs somewhere to rest," he said quietly, nodding toward Ella. The nurse hesitated. "She's not a patient, Mr. Carter. We usually don't allow children to stay overnight. Please." His voice cracked more than he intended. "She's terrified. I don't want her sent away." The nurse studied him for a moment, then softened. "There's a quiet room by the lounge, one small bed. Just for the night." Relief washed over Liam. "Thank you. I'll stay with her." Later, in the dim, quiet room, Ella curled beneath a thin hospital blanket, her arms wrapped tightly around her backpack, like it was the only thing tethering her to safety. Liam sat in the chair beside her, exhaustion pulling at his shoulders, but he couldn't take his eyes off the child. Her eyelids drooped, heavy with sleep, but her voice mumbled softly. "Did I do good, Mr. Liam?" He leaned closer, his tone gentle. "You were amazing." "I found her, just like she said." Her voice broke with drowsiness. "I didn't cry much." Liam smiled faintly, his heart twisting. "I know. You were so brave." Her breath steadied, soft and rhythmic now, and within moments she drifted into deep sleep. One small hand remained clenched around her backpack strap, refusing to let go. Liam pulled the blanket higher over her shoulders, watching her features relax at last. For a fleeting second he thought of his daughter, Lily. The weight of her memory came rushing back, raw and sharp. He remembered sitting by her bed in another hospital room, holding her hand as her breath grew weaker. He remembered the helplessness, the fear of being too late, and now here he was again, only this time the child was alive, fragile, but holding on. Why did it matter so much to him? Why couldn't he walk away? He ran a hand over his face, trying to steady himself. He should have dropped the girl off and gone home. He should be with Max, his son, reading Christmas stories, eating too many cookies. That was the plan. But the moment he picked Ella up in that alley, the world had shifted. Her tiny body had leaned into his chest without hesitation, trusting him without even knowing his name. That trust had cracked something inside him wide open. It wasn't obligation that kept him here. It wasn't pity. It was something warmer, something he hadn't let himself feel in years, something frighteningly close to hope. Snow flurried outside the hospital windows, as Liam walked into the lounge carrying a paper bag. The smell of coffee and something sweet filled the air. On the couch sat Max Carter, his 8-year-old son, legs swinging restlessly. The boy looked up the moment he saw his father. His eyes, curious and uncertain, flicked to the bag in Liam's hand. "Hey, buddy," Liam greeted softly. Max rose, clutching a folded piece of paper in his hands. "I brought something," he muttered, not meeting his father's eyes. Inside the quiet room down the hall, Ella lay curled beneath a blanket. Liam sat cross-legged on the floor beside her, reading softly from a familiar book. Max paused at the doorway, his chest tightening. That used to be his story, the one Dad read when the snow fell outside their home, when Mom was still alive, when everything had made sense. Now Dad was reading it to someone else's child. Max's throat tightened. He wasn't angry at Ella, not really. She seemed sweet. But watching his father so gentle, so different, stirred something sharp and uneasy in him. Just as he turned to leave, Liam looked up and spotted him. "Max," he said, his voice warm. "Come in." Max hesitated, then stepped inside. He held out the folded paper. Liam took it carefully and unfolded it. A crayon drawing showed 2 children building a snowman, with a taller figure smiling beside them. "I thought maybe she'd like it," Max said quickly. Liam's chest ached as he looked at his son. "She'll love it." "Do you want to give it to her when she wakes up?" Max shook his head. "You can." Silence stretched before Max finally added, his voice small, "You used to read that book to me." Liam blinked. "Yeah, I did." "You haven't in a while," Max whispered, staring at the floor. Liam sighed, regret etching across his face. "I thought maybe you were getting too old for bedtime stories." "I'm not," Max blurted too quickly, then softer, "Not really." Liam placed a gentle hand on his son's shoulder. "Then I'll read to you again, tonight. Just say the word." Max nodded faintly, but his eyes still carried a weight. Finally he whispered, "Do you still think about Mom?" Liam's expression shifted, his voice quieting. "Every day." Max's lips trembled. "Then, why do you look happy again?" The question pierced him. Liam crouched lower, meeting Max's gaze. "Are you going to love them more than us?" Max's voice cracked. "Ella and her mom, you've been with them a lot. You smile more. You're different. It's like you're not just ours anymore." Liam's chest tightened. He pulled Max closer. "I'm sorry if it felt that way. You and we've been everything to each other since your mom passed. That hasn't changed. That will never change." Max swallowed hard. "I just don't want to lose someone again." "You won't," Liam said firmly. "Change doesn't mean replacing. It just means maybe our family has room to grow." Max was quiet for a long moment, then whispered, "If I help, does that mean I get to keep reading with you?" Liam smiled, brushing his son's hair back. "Deal." The sun dipped low, spilling golden light through the tall hospital windows. Room 293 glowed softly, filled with the gentle hum of machines. Hannah, the woman who had been a nameless patient only days ago, lay propped against her pillows, color returning to her cheeks. Liam sat nearby, fingers wrapped around a paper cup gone cold. He had dropped Max home with the sitter hours earlier, promising he'd be back soon, but his feet had refused to leave this place. His eyes kept drifting toward Hannah, the mother who had fought quietly and alone until her body gave out. On the bedside table rested her folded coat. Inside its pocket, Liam had found something that left him shaken, an old thank-you card written in his late wife Claire's handwriting. A note about a young nurse with blonde hair and soft blue gloves who had stayed by her side during Lily's birth, whispering encouragement when Liam had been too terrified to breathe. And now here she was again, the same woman years later, broken and unrecognizable, yet still tied to his story in ways he couldn't explain. "You were there," Liam had whispered to her unconscious form the night before. "You helped my wife when I couldn't, and now your daughter has walked into my life." The thought still lingered as Hannah stirred now, her lashes fluttering open. Her gaze darted wildly until it landed on the small figure barreling toward her bed. "Mommy!" Ella's cry broke the air. Hannah's trembling arms lifted, and Ella climbed onto the bed, hugging her mother so fiercely it made Hannah gasp. Tears slipped down her face as she whispered, "I found you, Mommy, just like you said. I came to the hospital." Hannah clutched her daughter, her voice choked. "I'm so sorry. I left you alone." "You didn't," Ella whispered back with childlike certainty. "You said you'd come back. I waited." Liam stood quietly by the doorway, his heart thudding at the reunion. When Hannah finally lifted her eyes to his, recognition flickered. "You're the man who saved her," she whispered. "And she saved you," Liam replied softly. The days that followed blurred into a rhythm of healing. Hannah shared pieces of her story. Once a pediatric nurse, later a janitor in the very hospital she had trained in, doing whatever she could to keep Ella fed after illness cost her everything. She spoke with no bitterness, only quiet resilience. Ella and Max became inseparable. He read to her when Hannah was too tired. She followed him like a shadow, and together they decorated the little Christmas tree Liam had brought into the room. The nurses smiled and called them the Snowstorm siblings. One evening, Liam looked around at the small, mismatched decorations, at Hannah's soft smile, at the children's laughter, and realized something. This wasn't just survival. It was the beginning of something whole. A year later, laughter spilled from a townhouse near Central Park. A modest Christmas tree glowed with handmade ornaments and paper snowflakes. Ella sat cross-legged on the floor, unwrapping a gift Max had given her, a hand-drawn book telling her own story, dedicated to my little sister from your big brother, Max. Her eyes filled instantly as she hugged him. Liam watched from the kitchen, heart full. He hadn't expected to love again. He hadn't expected to find family in the middle of grief. Hannah stepped into the room in a red knit dress, holding gingerbread cookies. Their eyes met, and without words, Liam reached for her hand. She didn't resist. "I used to think I was only meant to survive," she whispered. "You were always meant to be loved," Liam answered gently. Snow fell outside, blanketing the city in silence. Inside, surrounded by warmth, laughter, and second chances, they were no longer strangers bound by loss. They were a family, the kind found not by blood, but by miracles. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments where in the world are you watching from. We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.